I had the good misfortune of being a member of the President's Council on Bioethics, which was President Bush's council, for about 8 years. And this really gave me an education in bioethics and politics. In retrospect, before I joined the council, I was an innocent. I was very naive about what happens when bioethics is conducted in the national spotlight, especially when the deliberations are about controversial issues that have become part of partisan politics. I learned some very valuable and positive things. I did learn that people of goodwill who have very different values and worldviews it's possible for us to join together in civil debate over many of the bioethical issues that divide many people in our country. I learned that thoughtful scholars with diverse disciplinary backgrounds and moral commitments who have not focused their attention on bioethics issues bring new insights to the bioethics table. I also learned some more painful lessons. Lobbyists and advocates who have a stake in the government's resolution of a controversial bioethical problem want you on their side. If you acknowledge the merits of a range of different ethical views, you'll be attacked by individuals and interest groups who have a single agenda. People also won't like it if you deviate from what one ethicist, John Moreno, has called the Great Bioethics Compromise. And in his words, this is a consensus philosophy and social role for people who work in the field, and it prescribes keep a close eye on scientific innovation for its societal implications, apply the brakes now and then, as needed through regulation or just the glare of public discussion, and let the bioethicists be the ones to analyze how all this is going. John Evans, who's here with us, has made some similar points about sort of the conventional view of people in bioethics. So people from the field comfortable with this compromise were vocal critics of a very politically diverse President's Council on Bioethics that dared to depart from this orthodox mainstream approach. Now, I'm someone who comes from mainstream bioethics, but I was really disheartened at some of the narrow-mindedness characterizing criticism, certainly not all of it, but some of the probably loudest criticism. There were important exceptions, but critics often preferred to rely on media reports and unfounded assertions about what the council was doing rather than going to the actual reports and the transcripts that were there for all to see about what we really were doing. Some people showed little tolerance for including people outside of the bioethics field in this group, and some people indulged in petty personal attacks instead of critiquing the substantive work. So what's needed to get by these kinds of barriers? Well, one thing we all need to remember is to practice humility. We need to not get carried away by our own importance, recognize that we can learn from those who have different ethical positions and politics. And we live in this world, but this nation as well, that's quite pluralistic. People have very diverse views on biotechnologies, and we have to talk to each other. Exercise due diligence. This always applies, but it's especially important when addressing controversial topics. Don't engage in soundbite ethics or simply ridicule or dismiss opposing views. Don't cut corners on research or fact-finding if you want to speak out. My training is in law, and it's drilled into us, there usually is more than one side to a story. And I think that's often true. Also avoid the guild mentality, the view that only certain people are allowed to participate in bioethics debates. Recognize that outsiders with different backgrounds and political views have fresh insights. Seek them out in your work, invite them to conferences, and welcome their participation. So these are ways I think we can try to avoid the pitfalls of bioethics politics. Now I'm going to put on a different hat, my law professor hat, and talk about regulatory gaps. So I think that many of the most concerning biotechnologies involve reproduction and enhancement, and the existing oversight system is poorly designed to address these areas. The federal government exercises oversight over medical practice primarily by putting conditions on federal funding. For example, on the research that the National Institutes of Health funds, and also medical care paid by Medicare or Medicaid. They may have more of a hook now in the future as we see how the health reform goes forward. But innovations in reproduction generally fall outside of these areas, so there's no regulatory hook. The FDA regulates products, drugs, devices, biological products, not procedures. Reproductive innovations like implantation of multiple embryos tend to be procedures, so there's no agency looking at this. States are assigned the role of regulating most medical care, and few of them have the expertise or the political will to get involved in this area. There are some examples of states regulating, but not that much. Self-regulation's obviously ineffective. Organizations like the American Society for Reproductive Medicine don't even require members to take a pledge to adhere to the ethical standards the organization supposedly subscribes to, so there's really no teeth to it. And then another important regulatory gap is off-label prescribing, which allows relatively uncontrolled use of FDA-approved drugs and devices for enhancement purposes. So what typically happens is a drug like Provigil for narcolepsy helps you keep awake. Once that's approved for that condition, narcolepsy, doctors are free to prescribe it for any use they want to. They can do so in the absence of good research demonstrating safety and effectiveness for the enhancement use. Neither the FDA nor any other group engages in a systematic look at the nature and value of the so-called benefit for the enhancement use. And, you know, it's really becoming a pure consumer preference is defining benefit in this area, and there's really no oversight there. So I think we need to develop some kind of a mechanism to consider and regulate reproductive innovations and enhancement uses of new medical products. Thank you.